Confident footsteps echo down the hallway, Lucia's boots hitting the stone floor. The royal guard swing open the massive throne room doors. For the young knight at just 20, Lucia's already risen to commander of the Empire's knights. Thanks to her ruthless streak and brilliant tactics, she's earned a nickname people only whisper in fear now. Lucia, known everywhere as the Dark Monster, has come for an audience with the Emperor. As she strides past the bowing servants, they tremble with fear surrounded by courtiers. The Emperor greets the young woman. Lucia salutes the son of the Empire, leaving out her family name. The courtiers are scandalized, but she did it because she cut all ties with her noble family. The moment she came of age, Lucia hears people gossiping behind her back, but she couldn't care less. The Emperor dismisses all the courtiers, promising to deal with their paperwork later. Alone with the knight, he notes how much she's grown in the last 5 years. Lucia doesn't miss the chance to point out that the Emperor's gotten older. In that time too, His Majesty always knew she had a sharp tongue, but he changes the subject, asking about Lucia's progress, already imagining the Empire with 4 sword masters. That title's only given to the absolute best swordsman. Right now there are 3 sword masters, one in each allied nation. The Supreme Commander is one of the greatest swordsmen on the continent, but once he retires the Empire's military strength will take a serious hit to prevent that. The Emperor ordered Lucia, whose skill is unmatched, to train for 5 years straight. She's never let him down, not once, and now he's eager to hear her report. He asks Lucia to show the mark of a master, the crimson sword aura, but instead the girl just lets out a heavy sigh, since she's here for a totally different reason. Today the Dark Monster came to ask the Emperor for parental leave. At first His Majesty doesn't even realize she's being serious. He laughs, thinking it's just one of her weird jokes. After all, this girl never paid any attention to the noble guys trying to woo her. But when he sees Lucia's serious face, the Emperor apologizes for jumping to conclusions. After all, a lot can change in 5 years. The Knight Commander lowers her head and a bit awkwardly says, "The child is 5." When the Emperor asks what she means, Lucia explains she has a 5-year-old kid. His Majesty just can't believe the knight is for real, so the girl keeps trying to convince him she's not joking at all. Lucia made up her mind to come to the Emperor just yesterday morning, the day before their meeting. She woke up in a cold sweat, trying to figure out what had happened to her, because that morning Lucia was supposed to take her last breath, but for some reason she was still alive. Lucia, the strongest sword master on the continent, had been known in the Empire for years as the Dark Monster. Even without a noble title, she climbed the ranks and became the Supreme Commander, winning countless battles. But for reasons no one knows, she left the imperial court and spent over 40 years alone in the mountains. Last night she could feel death closing in, and Lucia was ready to accept it. But she woke up alive in her room again, and went straight for her swords. Lucia grabbed one of them and, still in her pajamas, started training. She felt this weird rush of energy, and way more than anyone her age should have. Misjudging her strength, she swung the sword to toss it onto the rack, but threw it so hard it shot up into the air. The weapon got stuck in the ceiling right above her head, leaving her totally baffled. Lucia was surprised to see an angel painted on the ceiling. She'd never noticed it before, but somehow it looked really familiar. Then someone knocked on the door, barrel that confused her too, since the only barrel she knew was her deputy. Only someone who'd earned the title of Swordmaster could reach this mountain ridge, where Lucia had secluded herself. Wondering how Beryl, who hadn't reached that rank yet, managed to get here, she stepped out of her room. The Dark Knights of the Eldarian Empire standing outside all greeted their commander in unison. Lucia came out to them, having no clue what was going on. Beryl was waiting for his commander, kneeling before her. While the knight talked about how much time had passed, Lucia studied his face closely. She couldn't figure out why. This guy looked exactly like the Beryl she'd known in her youth. It crossed Lucia's mind that maybe this was the deputy commander's son. When she heard him call her commander, she told him not to address her the way his father did. Beryl tried to understand what Lucia meant, but just ended up even more confused. Lucia went back to her room to change, leaving her subordinate standing in the hallway totally lost. She walked up to her wardrobe, and when she glanced in the mirror, she froze in the reflection. She saw herself, Lucia, looking just like she did in her early 20s. She thought she must be losing her mind, because there's just no way that could be real. There was another knock at the door, and Beryl announced that His Majesty ordered her to come to the palace tomorrow. Lucia couldn't believe what she was hearing. She'd left the Imperial Knights 40 years ago, and the new young emperor couldn't possibly know who she was. Realizing something was off, she decided to check the scars on her body. Looking at one shoulder, she found the scar from the border in Sky Valley, and the one from the monster in the Palace Mountains. But for some reason the last one, the one from the Traitor's Circle, monster, was gone. Her shoulder was perfectly smooth, not a single mark from all those battles. Throwing on her uniform, Lucia rushed out of her room. The hallway felt weirdly familiar, and she remembered it was the dorm at the Imperial Training Grounds, where she'd spent 20 years. She asked Beryl what year it was, and finally realized she'd gone back in time. It was the 5th year of the new empire, the very year she became a swordmaster. Grabbing her head, Lucia felt the traces of tears on her face. Obviously, it was all because of the memories that came to her last night. The only thing she regretted was what happened to that girl. Night fell over the third training field behind the Imperial Palace. The next day she'd have to stand before the Emperor and report on her training results. She knew that's when she'd get her first top-level mission. Before Lucia's rebirth, the royal decree hadn't mentioned any details about the mission. She'd guessed it was an escort job for a runaway to the temple, but it turned out to be about protecting the saint. But in the end it wasn't even protection. What Lucia did became the start of that girl's cruel imprisonment. This time she was dead set on not repeating that sin, because after the new empire was declared, the black rot from the prophecy showed up, wrecking the land and causing famine in the middle of all that chaos. Just like the prophecy said, a saint appeared and a sacred tree grew beside her, bringing nature back to life. As soon as Lucia became commander-in-chief, she stole secret documents from the temple. Those papers had detailed info about the prophecy and the saint. When the saint awakened with the power of life, they sealed her inside the sacred tree right away, just to drain her life force. But the documents never mentioned that tree, and it was obvious. Someone planned to use the saint's power for their own gain, and Lucia was the one who ended up leading that child to her death, with her own hands. Even though she didn't know the whole truth when she took the mission, she couldn't shake the guilt. She couldn't keep serving the people, who thrived after the saint's death. So Lucia decided to leave the palace and live in the forest. She didn't care if it was the will of the gods, or just fate that brought her here. That's why this time she was determined she had to save that child. Fate was giving Lucia a shot at redemption, so now she was ready to do whatever it took to make sure the story ended differently. The next morning, she got up at dawn and headed to the harbor just outside the capital. She remembered it had to be somewhere around here, at the black market where smugglers always hung out. And now in this place full of greed and selfishness, Lucia had to find the child. She decided to focus on searching for the little girl, and rushed over to the crates. Looking around, she wondered how a child could survive in a place that reeked of rotting corpses. Suddenly a brand new lock on that rundown warehouse caught her eye. Realizing this might be the spot she was looking for, Lucia drew her sword. The weapon flared up with a powerful aura, and with a single swing, the girl shattered the iron lock to pieces. Inside the room, she found cages filled with all kinds of rare and super valuable birds. The stench in there was unbearable, and Lucia pinched her nose shut. She decided to sink her body with the place, wanting to feel every little detail bathed in bright light. Lucia closed her eyes and focused. It was faint, but she managed to catch the sound of a heartbeat and some anxious, shaky breathing. The source was somewhere deep in the storage, so Lucia rushed straight toward it. Throwing the doors open, she froze in the doorway. That's how she met that scared little kid again, sitting on the floor wrapped up in a filthy sack. Moving slowly so she wouldn't scare the girl, Lucia walked closer. She tried to remember if she'd ever talked to kids this young before. She'd never had the chance to visit her friends' kids, and even hit. The boy she'd rescued on the battlefield was older than this girl. Having no clue how to act around a little kid, Lucia just stood there in silence, desperately searching for the right words. The girl looked up into her eyes and in a shaky voice called her mom. It was the 4th year of the new empire, and in a small orphanage in the Garachi district, the candles had already been blown out. All the kids were asleep, but Mia was still awake and could hear Annie tossing and turning. In her sleep, Mia realized the little one was having nightmares again. Even though they could get in trouble for it, she climbed into Annie's bed to stay with her until she calmed down. Mia was furious that when someone wanted to adopt her, the shameless director made Annie take her place. She promised herself she'd make it big one day and come back for Annie, so she could take her home. Mia told Annie to whack those stuck-up village kids with a broom if they started picking on her and calling her stinky again. But she knew Annie was way too gentle and kind-hearted to ever actually do something like that. Wiping away her tears, Annie wondered who would hold her hand when Mia got adopted, since in her dreams her mom always let go of her hand. The girl tried to push those thoughts away and fall asleep. Still, she couldn't stop wishing that one day her mom would show up, grab her hand tight and never let go again. Holding Mia close, Annie finally drifted off to sleep. When she heard the little girl call her mom, Lucia quickly said that wasn't true at all. But then she added that she was here to save her, and reached out her hand. Maybe the kid thought she was her mom. Because of their matching hair color, there probably weren't even 50 people with black hair on the whole continent, Lucia said. It was way too dangerous here and they needed to get somewhere safe. But for some reason the girl didn't rush to grab her outstretched hand. Before coming here, Lucia had come up with a plan. Take the saint by a house on the edge of town, hire a nanny and hide the girl there until she awakened. At one point, Lucia even started to wonder if the kid understood her at all. But suddenly, Annie said she had to stay and clean up because if she didn't, it would hurt clutching a dirty sack. She kept repeating that she couldn't leave or else it would hurt. Looking around, Lucia realized the girl really had been cleaning. The trash was all piled up in one spot. But the talk about pain threw Lucia off, because even if Annie looked fragile, she was the saint sent by God with divine power that kept her alive. Even after being trapped in a tree, Lucia just couldn't wrap her head around how a kid like that could be scared of pain. She took the sack from Annie and gave her a quick once-over, but didn't see any wounds. But then out of nowhere the girl started screaming that it hurt, and her hand lit up with a bright light. Lucia was stunned by the insane divine power packed into that tiny little hand. Suddenly Annie, staring at something behind the girl, said she was feeling way better now. When she turned around, our heroine spotted some marks on the wall, and a terrible thought hit her. Obviously, those bastards beat the girl just to prove she had divine powers. Lucia clenched her teeth in anger. She realized the saint had suffered her whole life, even long before she was sealed inside that tree. Grabbing Annie by the shoulders, the heroine demanded to know how she ended up here, where her parents were and where she'd been before. She was dead set on finding everyone responsible, and making them suffer just as much. Shaking all over, the little girl admitted her mom and dad were gone, and she'd ended up in an orphanage. Noticing how scared Annie was, Lucia pulled back and apologized. While the girl wiped away her tears, the heroine thought that no matter what, she had to take her with her. Suddenly she started thinking about her own childhood. Her mother died right after giving birth. Her father never visited, not even once, until her coming-of-age ceremony, and even the maids and nannies never treated Lucia with any warmth. She thought that was normal, until she joined the Knights, and realized things weren't supposed to be that way at all. But loneliness had already become part of her life, and nothing but swordsmanship ever made her feel alive. Lucia felt how much she and Annie were alike and yet so different, because the girl still held out hope for her parents. But she's a saint, and who knows if she could have ever lived like a regular kid, in a regular family. And right then, an idea struck the heroine. Annie was 5, the same age as when her own training began. Lucia told the little one they were a lot alike, and she'd grown up without parents too. Reaching out her hand, she said there was only one way to protect her. They'd have to become a family. The heroine knew for sure, only someone as strong and unusual as her could save a kid this special. The little girl stared in surprise at the woman, who gently offered to be her mom. Suddenly men's voices echoed outside. They'd noticed the busted lock and were running this way. Lucia told the girl to open all the cages at once. When the people burst in, she added that then the birds could fly wherever they wanted, just like Annie could leave with her. When the men stormed in, they went straight for the birds, each one worth a fortune. While they were distracted, Lucia managed to get the girl out of there. The smugglers couldn't catch her, thanks to the heroine's huge leaps. She lost them fast, holding Annie tight, and she promised herself that this time, she'd be the one to protect this little girl. The heroine brought the girl to her own house, hidden deep among thick trees. Pulling off her dirty gloves, Lucia turned to Annie. The girl stood trembling on the doorstep, tears in her eyes, not daring to step off the mat. The heroine guessed she might be too shy to come in, thinking she was way too dirty. She went to the bathroom and filled a big tub with hot water, so Annie could wash up when Lucia called her. Annie tiptoed over, barely letting her dirty feet touch the floor. Annie dashed into the bathroom and slammed the door behind her. The heroine tried to remember if she'd bathed herself at that age, but it was so long ago she just couldn't recall. Quite a while passed and Lucia started to worry, so she went to the door to check if everything was okay. Wet and undressed, Annie peeked out of the bathroom looking super embarrassed. But just as she was about to say something, Beryl's voice called from outside the door, reminding the heroine about her upcoming visit to the palace. Lucia knelt down in front of the girl and asked her to wait here, promising she'd be back soon. Then she stood up, called out to Beryl, and left the house. Sitting in the carriage, Lucia decided to ask her assistant about his nephew. She remembered that he was born before she ever showed up at the training grounds. Beryl was really touched that the commander remembered his nephew, and he couldn't hide how happy that made him. He told her that while his sister was on maternity leave, she got some real rest, and then came back as a top officer in the Order of White Mages. Beryl was grateful to his commander, since she was the one who arranged the leave for his sister. Staring out the window, Lucia thought back to how it all happened. Beryl reminded her that the leave was actually approved by the White Commander, Lionel Ruvens. That guy used to be considered Lucia's rival. Once the two of them fought a duel, and the winner got to have any wish granted by the loser. Even though Lucia won, she didn't really want anything for herself, so she asked for maternity leave for Beryl's pregnant sister. Lucia smiled, since that leave was actually working out in her favor. Now she couldn't just drop all her duties just to stay with the child. She knew Annie needed a safe environment, even when she wasn't around, and to make sure of that, she had to get rid of everyone involved with the Saint's sealing cry, which is why staying an Imperial Knight to gather intel was the smart move. Plus, Lucia needed a control stone. It was crucial to hide the child's divine power. Even a genius like Hit would need half a year to upgrade the control stone they stole from the temple, but with a 6-month leave, that problem would solve itself. With that plan in mind, Lucia arrived at the palace and went in for an audience with His Majesty. That's where this whole story began. And now here she is standing in front of an angry man who brought her into his office to talk things over in private. He thinks it's outrageous that Lucia is asking for parental leave when her kid's already 5. Suddenly the emperor realizes she's been raising her daughter all this time, out on the training grounds, on the hill. Lucia bows her head obediently and says that's exactly what happened. His Majesty demands to know who the child's father is. Lucia says she was married to an herbalist, but he fell off a cliff while gathering medicinal plants. The emperor's surprised that for a widow, the girl doesn't look sad at all. Plus he's still hoping she's just joking, because if Lucia gave birth 5 years ago, there's no way she could have trained and become a sword master, and neglecting her duties, and using the training grounds for her own purposes is a crime. Lucia thinks it's ridiculous for someone as soft as the emperor, someone whose life she saved more than once, to act all high and mighty. She's sure he's just trying to look tough, even though his hands are shaking from holding the wine glass. Remembering that in his past life, the emperor died young because of alcohol, she picks up a quill from his desk, but filling it with her aura she gives it a graceful flick, barely brushing the edge of His Majesty's glass. Lucia slices it clean in half. Stunned, the emperor tries to figure out how that's even possible. After all, not even a sword master can channel wild energy through something that isn't solid. That might mean the girl's reached a level way beyond a master. The emperor's mood shifts instantly, and Lucia demands 6 months of paid leave, and to keep her training facility. As she leaves the room, she smirks and says she just made his glass smaller to match his size. The emperor watches the cheeky girl go, the one who actually dared to call him out on how much he drinks. After finally getting her time off approved, Lucia heads back home. She can't help but imagine the emperor's face when he finds out the kid he vouched for is actually the very saint he's planning to seal away. As soon as she walks in, she starts checking every room, looking for Annie. The girl's nowhere to be found, and Lucia wonders if she's still in the bath. When she steps into the bathroom, she sees Annie standing on the edge of the tub, reaching for a towel that's way too high up. Right then Annie's foot slips, but Lucia manages to catch her just in time. She asks why Annie's still in here. With tears in her eyes, the little girl says she just couldn't reach the towel. Lucia notices the dirt on her own boots, and thinks she could use a wash herself. She sets Annie down on the floor, but for some reason the girl keeps crying. Lucia wonders if she should have helped Annie dry off. After all, maids always did that for her. They even did it when she was over 90, and now she's supposed to raise a kid all by herself. Lucia saved the saint by deciding to become her mom, but suddenly it hits her. This is going to be way harder than she thought. After the bath, she sits Annie at the table, but the girl still hasn't touched her food. Lucia just can't figure out why Annie's acting like this, or what's got her so upset. She realizes raising this girl is going to cost her, and it's been 9 years since Lucia cut ties with her family. She doesn't have any extra cash, but at least she burned all the documents, so no one can ever find out who this kid really is. And that gives Lucia some peace of mind. Plus the emperor still hasn't given any orders about the saint, and Lucia's got 11 years before Annie awakens. Until then she'll need to use the control stone to keep Annie's divine power in check, and track down everyone involved in the sealing. But for now, Lucia's biggest worry is figuring out what they're going to eat tomorrow. Suddenly Annie snaps the heroine out of her thoughts by saying she wants to go back. Shocked, Lucia asks if she means going back to the orphanage, but Annie doesn't really want to go there. Having a mom in a real hot bath feels like a dream. Still, the girl thinks Lucia is tired of her and sees her as useless, struggling to find the words and talking about herself in third person. Annie says she's dirty and shouldn't be here. Not quite getting what she means, Lucia looks around and admits this place isn't really fit for a kid. She tells Annie she's kind of right, but suddenly the girl starts crying even harder. The heroine tries to figure out what Annie's words really mean. She glances down at her own muddy boots, and suddenly realizes Annie was talking about herself. Lucia tries to explain that she's the one who got the bathroom dirty with her boots, but Annie just sobs louder, blaming herself for ruining everything. The legendary dark monster feared on the battlefield feels totally powerless in front of a crying child, but she quickly pulls herself together and finds a way to handle the situation. Lucia says sending Annie back to the orphanage isn't the best solution, and this place they're in now isn't really her home, so keeping it spotless doesn't even matter. When Annie asks what this place is, the heroine says it's part of the Imperial Palace. Mia once told Annie the palace is like paradise, where shining people live and never worry about food. Looking at Lucia, the girl can't help but think how different those people are from her. She figures if she helps her new mom clean up, maybe Lucia will smile and want to stay with her longer. Annie says she can do all that, and the heroine even feels a little guilty, thinking about how pure this kid's heart is. Realizing they've finally connected, Lucia tells the girl her name. Then she asks Annie to start calling her mom as soon as possible, and to keep it a secret that she used to live in an orphanage. Just thinking that the woman sitting across from her is going to be her mom now takes the girl's breath away. Lucia apologizes in advance and warns Annie that from now on, people will be calling her by a different name. The heroine wonders what name would suit the little girl, and right then there's a knock at the door. She signals Annie to keep quiet and gets up from the table. Wondering who it could be, Lucia grabs her sword, then suddenly notices someone climbing in through the window. Against the sunset sky, a shock of blonde hair pops up in the window. Thinking it's a mercenary, Lucia whips out her sharp sword in a flash. But the guy who jumps into the room throws up his hands and laughs. Surprised the commander didn't recognize him. It's only been 5 years since they last saw each other. He has no idea that all of that was in her past life. And now the heroine can barely remember people from her youth. The guy reminds Lucia he's Vernon Javier, 3rd ranked knight, the Fox's shadow, best scout among the Dark Knights. He admits he almost peed his pants when the commander pointed her sword at him. Right after Vernon, someone else climbs in through the window. 2nd ranked knight Jillian. Olivia immediately spots the child in the room, who looks a lot like their commander. Then another knight, Heath, appears at the window, and also can't take his eyes off the little girl. All three start arguing over how this skinny kid could look so much like Lucia. Standing behind them with her arms crossed, the heroine asks why these idiots decided to climb in through the window, instead of using the door like normal people. Lucian's loyal crew can't believe she's talking like a 90-year-old grandma, after just 5 years apart. Now the heroine remembers these three were always wild and had sharp tongues. She realizes she needs to work on the way she talks, since she sounds like an old hermit. Lucia turns to Annie and sees that Jillian's already scooped her up, and is tossing her in the air. The girl got so scared she couldn't even make a sound, so our heroine snatched her away from Olivia. Vernon cracks a joke about the girl, who's barely walked in and already managed to tick off the commander. He hurries to show everyone how you're supposed to treat kids, and hands Annie a lollipop. Suddenly Lucia feels the girl fall asleep in her arms just like that. Not knowing much about kids, our heroine wonders if it's normal for someone her age to just pass out so fast. She quickly carries Annie to bed, telling her entourage to stay put and not touch anything. The three of them stand there, a bit stunned by how irritable their commander's being. Meanwhile, Lucia lays the little one down on a soft pillow, and sits beside her on the edge of the bed. She touches the girl's forehead to check for a fever, since she'd spent so long in the bath with nothing on. As our heroine gets up to leave, she hears Annie quietly call her by name. Lucia smiles and says the girl remembered her name right, looking up at her with honey-colored eyes. The little one asks if she can give her a name. The heroine smiles and says, from now on her name is Nia. Drifting off, the girl happily repeats her new name a few times, and it makes Lucia feel all warm inside after all she'd given her. The name of her own mother, Lavinia Kluwer, whom she'd missed her whole life, even though she'd never met her. Back in the living room, Lucia tells her close ones that she's got a child now, but she flat out refuses to tell them who the girl's father is. The emperor said she'd better keep quiet if it's about some herbalist. All three knights decide to apologize to the commander for breaking in through the window. Like that, they're ready to take any punishment for what they did. So they just drop down and start doing squats. Lucia sits Heath down next to her, and even though the others grumble that she's playing favorites, she explains it's just because he's the youngest. Vernon still can't wrap his head around how she managed to raise a kid without anyone finding out. Lucia says it's because her father was the one raising the girl. Up until now, the knights think the commander should hire a nanny. She's not exactly the type to handle a kid alone, and realizing they've said too much again, they immediately punish themselves, shooting them a stern look. Lucia says they don't need a nanny or a maid. She insists she can handle raising a kid just fine, though the knights' faces clearly say they don't buy it. Jillian decides to risk it, and asks if she can share her opinion. She's worried the commander might run the girl into the ground before she even makes it to kindergarten. Lucia, who can't even keep her own stuff tidy, is totally stumped for a comeback. Vernon suggests Jillian handle the cooking, Heath take care of cleaning, and he'll take charge of the kids' education and upbringing. Annoyed that they're making decisions without her, Lucia says no way and kicks the knights out. But Vernon knew she'd react like that, so he came prepared. He pulls a letter with the imperial seal out of his pocket. His Majesty wrote that Lucia's subordinates barged in and demanded time off too, so they could help their commander. With shaking hands, the heroine sets the letter down on the table. She's scared to even imagine what those troublemakers did to make the emperor write her personally. Lucia asks why knights who are supposed to protect the empire acted so recklessly. They all start talking over each other, saying they waited 5 whole years for their commander, and while she was gone, the other orders kept picking fights with them for no reason. With tears in his eyes, Vernon complains that they get zero support from the nobles, and they're struggling too. Lucia gets that her team really had it rough, but now she's got Vernon, who's super smart, Jillian from that famous chef family, and the genius Heath by her side. With these precious friends who fought with her for over 20 years, raising a kid should be way easier. She sighs and takes the helping hands. Reaching out to her, the knights, all happy, say goodbye to their commander and climb out the window. Standing in the middle of the room, Lucia thinks she should probably board up that window. Suddenly she hears quick footsteps coming her way. Beryl bursts into the room all upset, complaining how much it hurts that the commander went on maternity leave without telling him. He blames Lucia, saying they've been working their butts off for 5 years. Covering her duties, Lucia dryly tells him to leave. Glad she'll finally get some peace and quiet, but she doesn't get to be alone because someone else walks in. Turning around, Lucia sees the commander of the white mages striding toward her. It's clear Lion Ruvens was in a big hurry to talk to her. He stops just a few steps away, staring Lucia down all stern and accusing. He skips any greeting, and demands to know who the father of her child is. Unlike Lucia, who's called the Dark Monster Lions, known across the Empire as the Walking Angel, he's always been a stickler for the law, and now he's pressing her hard for an answer. Lucia tries to figure out what brought Lion here, and if he's investigating on the Prime Minister's orders. That guy's always been a headache for her, and now he might ruin all her plans. So Lucia says she doesn't owe anyone an explanation, giving the girl a hard stare. Lion tells her to keep that attitude, because if he ever finds out that guy's name, he'll kill him with his own hands. After leaving the commander's office, her 3 loyal subordinates start talking about how Burrell was crying behind the door. Neither Jillian nor Vernon can believe that Lucia is really the one who gave birth to that kid. They're convinced their commander only ever touches men when she's slitting their throats with her sword. While those two are busy arguing about how much the girl looks like their commander, he stays totally silent. But suddenly he cuts them off, and Jillian and Vernon turn around surprised. The guy says the commander's changed a lot. He's always so perceptive. Notice just how badly Lucia wants to protect that child. Even though the heroine didn't talk to Lion much in her past life, he always seemed quiet and put together to her. That's why what he just said really shocked her. Something's clearly off with the commander of the white mages. Meanwhile, Lion himself is fuming, wondering why Lucia ever got involved with such a worthless, irresponsible guy. After a long round of questions, the emperor finally told him the kid's father ditched Lucia and ran off. His Majesty even laughed and said, if he were that guy, he'd have run away from a woman like Lucia too. The thought that some jerk could just abandon a girl with a child, tears lying up inside. And now standing in front of her after all these years, he remembers the time they made a bet. Back then Lion realized he couldn't hold back his feelings anymore, so he worked up the nerve to ask Lucia if she'd grant his wish. If he managed to beat her, Lion challenged her, hoping she'd finally show at least a little interest in him, but in that fight he ended up getting totally destroyed. From that day on, Lion decided he'd wait for Lucia until she reached the level she was aiming for, and finally opened her heart to him. But now standing in front of the girl, he sees worry all over her face. Lion hates seeing her look at him like that, so without thinking twice, he turns around and leaves, his sudden visit leaving a ton of questions swirling in her head. The girl has no idea why he suddenly started talking about killing the child's father, or what any of that was supposed to mean. A few days go by, and the main girl's lives slowly start settling into a family routine, just like they promised her. Loyal subordinates help out with the kid, cleaning and cooking. Now Lucia isn't scared of being a mom anymore, and everything feels just right for raising Nia. Vernon, Jillian and Heath plop down on the couch, grumbling about their commander's parenting style. Not even wanting to listen, Lucia just silently watches the girl. Nia crouches down and scrubs the floors until they shine. And even though Heath keeps trying to do it for her, Nia insists she can handle it all by herself. She scrubs every single spot with crazy determination, not letting any of the knights come near or take over her job. Lucia gives her subordinates a stern look, and tells them to find something else to do. That's when Heath tells the commander it's already May, though she has no clue why he's bringing it up. The guy reminds her that her birthday is in May. The heroine smiles at Heath, who's never done anything special for his own birthday. Lucia found this guy during a monster hunting mission, and ever since then he's come to visit her every May. The girl tries to remember if she's ever given Heath a birthday present and decides she'll do it this year. There's a knock at the door, and the knights get up to let the visitor in. Standing on the doorstep is Lord Lion Ruin's butler, holding a package from his master. The heroine, just like her assistants, is totally shocked by this. Vernon and Jillian take the note, peek out the door and call Lucia over so she can see for herself. The girl heads their way, trying to figure out what all the fuss is about. Stepping outside, she sees the hallway piled high with gifts and flowers. While Lucia tries to make sense of it all, her assistants dreamily call it love. Vernon hands the girl a card that came with the packages in it. Lion admits he can't hide his feelings anymore, but the note doesn't clear things up for Lucia at all. The heroine has no idea what the Imperial Prime Minister's son is trying to say with all this, or what he's planning. On top of that, he sent her clothes for both girls and boys, which just makes the whole thing even sketchier to her. Meanwhile, the knights are excitedly checking out all the expensive gifts. Lucia asks them to stop opening boxes, since it'll be harder to return them. But Vernon doesn't get why they'd return stuff that's perfect for Nia. The heroine realizes these things really would suit the girl better than the clothes she's been putting on her. And only now does the girl notice that Nia herself has disappeared from the living room. Lucia rushes to search every room for the girl, but she's nowhere to be found. Finally, they spot Nia behind a big stack of boxes she's trying to hold up. The boxes tumble to the floor, and Lucia helps the girl pick them up. The little one starts crying, and blames herself for dropping them while trying to help. It hurts the heroine to see how guilty Nia always feels, and how she keeps thinking she's dirty. It's been a week since she was rescued, and she gets along great with the others, so Lucia thought she was doing okay. Jillian grabs one of the dresses and runs over to Nia to try it on her, but the girl just curls up in the corner and refuses to put on her new clothes. She's shaking all over crying, and keeps saying over and over that she won't wear them. The knights try to gently talk Nia into it, but nothing works. Lucia, grabbing her head, asks them to leave, since the girl clearly seems exhausted left alone with her. Our heroine tries to explain that sooner or later, everything gets dirty, but Nia, still crying, insists that if she touches these things, they'll never be usable again. Lucia calmly tells her that's not true, and there's nothing that can't be used just because she touched it. Nia starts mumbling something about dirty gloves. You're not supposed to touch. She's probably talking about the gloves the heroine was wearing the day she arrived here. Still, she can't figure out what's really going on in this little girl's head. What other scars from the past is she still carrying inside? Deciding she can't just leave things like this, Lucia asks Nia to bring her those gloves. Then she heads to the bathroom and fills up a big tub with water. Lucia complains to Nia that she just can't get the water soapy enough, and asks for help. The girl walks into the bathroom shyly, clenching her fists, but as soon as she gets close to the tub, her mood changes in an instant, and she lights up at the sight of the rainbow bubbles. The heroine hands Nia her dirty gloves, and suggests they try washing them with all those bubbles. The little girl's face turns serious and focused, and she gets right to work. Lucia actually enjoys doing laundry too, since she's never done anything like this before. Seeing how happy Nia is with her progress, the heroine decides it's time for the most important part, and asks the girl to smell the clean glove. The little girl sniffs and says the gloves smell nice, like water and flowers. Lucia hugs the kid, presses her cheek to hers, and says she smells just the same, and even if they get dirty, they can just wash it off with soap and water. Nia finally smiles, because now no one will avoid her after she washes up. Lucia's glad she managed to calm the girl down and change her mind. While they're still playing in the water, Heath silently watches them for a while through the half-open door, then leaves. Waking up next to Nia in the morning, our heroine thinks about her new life. It's been a few days since she came back to the past, and now she's sure this isn't a dream. Suddenly Lucia notices her sword isn't by the bed, but she quickly remembers she moved it herself because of the kid. Since she can't swing a weapon in her room anymore, she'll have to go to the training grounds. Having a child here has turned this place into a real home. Lucia remembers how her own father once called her a monster. Now the thought actually amuses her. Someone like her acting all motherly. She looks at the little one with affection, and thinks she should trim her hair a bit. Nia reminds her of an angel sleeping so peacefully in her bed. But then again, this girl really is a saint. She's closer to an angel than anyone else. There's a knock outside and Vernon asks if the commander is awake. Not wanting to wake Nia, Lucia goes to the door and gets some urgent message from the knight. She opens the envelope, and finds an order to attend the knight's general meeting. This year Lucia's presence at the meeting is mandatory. For the past 5 years, Burrell's been going to these events instead of her, so now our heroine can't really back out. The Imperial Knights Admin Center is buzzing with the usual routine. Burrell Altered, from a famous Baron family known for hard work and honesty, climbed up to deputy commander thanks to his insane dedication. But lately he's not just been showing up late to meetings all the time, he's making sure everyone notices. People started whispering that something's off with Beryl. Maybe he just needs a break. Truth is, he's acting out to get the commander's attention, since he's hurt that the person he was so loyal to didn't even tell him she was taking time off. Still, even with all the tardiness, Beryl's doing his job just fine. So today he's shocked when the admin center actually gets a reply from the commander, something that hasn't happened in ages. And Beryl never thought they'd send Lucy an invite to the general meeting, even though she's on leave. Suddenly he realizes he's in trouble if they called the commander back. Right when he's gotten used to slacking off, Lucy strides confidently toward the meeting room doors. Dressed in uniform, she steps into the spacious room, where the other knights are already seated around the round table. The commander of the Red Knights, Vanguard, greets the Dark Monster with a sarcastic tone, acting like it's an honor she finally showed up. If the Dark Knights are cold and reserved, the Reds are like boiling lava, always at the center of drama. Staying calm, Lucy takes her seat and says, "It really has been a long time since her last visit." She can't help but notice that Lion Reuven's seat is still empty. Vanguard's heard rumors Lucy's on maternity leave, and he asks if it's true because honestly, it's hard to believe. He figures the Emperor must be pulling some trick, since there's no way a woman who just had a kid could become a sword master in 5 years. Lucy's poker face just gets on Vanguard's nerves, but Ashan, commander of the Yellow Knights, tells him to chill. He turns to Lucy and says, "They were just talking about how the military disciplinary committee might meet before she's back for good." Lucia gets that this is just his unfriendly way of changing the subject. After all, the Yellow Knights, a secret group reporting directly to His Majesty, have always hated that in a crisis, the Emperor turns to Commander Lucia instead of them. But Vanguard still can't let it go, and points out that training the Dark Knights commander took a pretty long time. He adds that cold as she is, Lucia suddenly started playing with fire. he's cut off by Lion Rubens, who walks into the council chamber and says, "Those words can't even be called a speech." Outraged by Bengart's attitude, Lion grabs a chair and sits down right next to Lucia. The Red Knight's commander is pissed, both that he picked that spot and that he dared to lecture him. With a calm smile, Lion says, he's just teaching him something he clearly never learned before. Now that all the knights are here, the meeting is officially open. Lucia sneaks a glance at Lion, convinced he's only doing all this to keep tabs on her. During the meeting, the commanders discuss last year's infiltration missions and issues with allied nations. The whole time Lucia can feel Lion's eyes on her. He's literally staring at her with lovesick puppy eyes. Ashan brings up the military budget and supplying allies, and the Continental Peace Organization. He says, if they keep sending so many magic stones to the Kingdom of Hones, the Empire's market will crash within 10 years. Heartless is loaded with magic stones, which is why Tarushian once colonized them, but the Empire managed to free them. In return, Heartless signed a special magic stone treaty with the Empire. Lucia also thinks it's wrong to supply them with everyday goods when they buy the stones for dirt cheap. Bengart says if the nobles keep investing like this, just to get the Emperor's attention, their greed will be the death of them. These nobles used to be the high-ranking elite of smaller nations that got united when the Empire was founded. Suddenly one of the commanders says, it looks like the temple's prophecy played a big part in this decision. The knights start talking about how anyone could actually believe that dead land could come back to life. Ages ago the temple talked about using the saint's power, but that was all lies. There was nothing about any sacred tree in the stolen documents. It was just a baseless rumor, and not even the high priest's power could revive the tainted land. Still before the heroine's rebirth, the nobles saw huge returns on their investments. Their lands were the first to recover, and they got richer thanks to magic stones. They totally profited from the saint's sacrifice, since the corrupt old guard got purged back then. So nobody questioned why those nobles were suddenly thriving. But with all that wealth they gained power and influence, and eventually became the ones in charge. Lucia can't help but think there's no way that was just a coincidence. The meeting wraps up and the knights leave the council chamber. But as the heroine heads for the exit, Beryl walks up to her. Bengard throws out another snide remark, this time about how the vice commander apparently lost his mommy. He adds that the once feared Dark Knights now have to serve under a guy who was just comforting a crying kid. Then again, since they're just a bunch of cowardly criminals, maybe they don't even care. Those words hit Lucia like a bolt of lightning. Most of the Dark Knights used to be part of the Dark Guild, but during the war nobody had time to nitpick about stuff like that. Bengart smirks at the girl, thinking that no matter how brutal the battlefield gets, the Dark Knights are just puppets behind it all. With a hand over his heart, Beryl asks the Red Knight's commander to take back what he said. But suddenly, Bengart loses control of his own body and drops to his knees. He's overwhelmed by a feeling like something's tearing him apart. From the inside, terror floods Bengart, and for the first time, he truly understands what a swordmaster's power feels like. The man writhes in agony on the floor at Commander Lucia's feet. The heroine tells him coldly that she can't wait to see what he'll accomplish while she's on maternity leave. Until then, her deputy Burrell will be taking over as commander of the Dark Knights, leaving Bengart barely breathing and kneeling in the middle of the room. Lucia walks out of the admin center. Meanwhile, Vernon and Jillian are getting ready to head out shopping. They promise to be back in an hour and tell Nia not to worry. Heath will be around if she needs anything. Watching their carriage roll away, Nia in her brand new dress hops down from the windowsill. She walks over to the bed and fluffs the pillows, mumbling to herself that one's for her and the other's for Lucia. Then she heads to the bathroom and says the same thing about the toothbrushes. The little girl just loves repeating her new name, the one Lucia gave her. Suddenly, she finds a broken plate in the kitchen and tries to fit the two halves back together. Right then Heath walks up to Nia and asks what she's doing. The girl starts crying and asks what she's supposed to do about the plate. Now she begins blaming herself again, this time for breaking the dish. Nia sobs sure they'll kick her out for this, but Heath just watches her, thinking that getting kicked out doesn't sound all that scary. And suddenly a bright aura of light forms around the girl. The louder she cries, the brighter it gets. Heath realizes he's looking at the holy power of a saint, the very one the temple and the whole continent are searching for. If he sends this kid to the temple, he'll get to travel the empire with the commander and live the good life. He stretches out his hands and starts drawing a teleportation circle, but Nia's aura fights back against the teleport spell. Burning even brighter, Heath is stunned by this insane divine power, feeling like it's about to go out of control, just like what he went through in the past. Heath's dad was a worthless con man, wandering from village to village selling fake medicine. But once people caught on to his scam, they had to hide out in the mountains, and that's when monsters showed up. In a mountain village, Heath's father used his son as a mage, making money off his powers. Even though the monsters scared the boy, that's where he made his first real friends, and he'd never been happier. Whenever monsters attacked, people of all ages would run straight to Heath. They'd crowd around the kid, pointing fingers and demanding he save them. That's exactly what happened on the day. The pressure got so bad Heath was shaking from the stress. In the end, the boy lost control of his magic. and that's when the explosion happened. Now he's standing in front of Nia, and all those memories come rushing back. He reaches out to the girl, and the blue energy of his magic cools the bright yellow fire of her aura just a bit. He wonders if this kid's divine power might go out of control, just like his did back then. Heath asks Nia if she wants to stay here, and she nods yes, her voice trembling. Looking at her silly expression, he wonders if he looked the same way when he lost control. He waves his hand over the broken plate halves, and they fuse back together. Amazed, Nia sets the plate down on the table. Watching her, he thinks she's probably hiding her powers too, wanting to stick close to the commander and not trusting anyone else. He tells the little one that if she keeps using her powers like this, she'll stand out, so it's better for her to live a normal life. But Nia doesn't get what normal life means, and Heath tries to put it into words. He explains that a normal life is about laughing a lot, eating well and hanging out with friends. Their conversation gets interrupted by footsteps in the hallway, and the door flying open. There's a red-haired girl standing in the kitchen doorway, hands on her hips, grinning wide and saying, "It's really not that bad." Lucia rushes out of the library, clutching a parenting book under her arm. When the passing court ladies spot what book she grabbed, they start whispering about the dark monsters. Surprise motherhood, but as soon as Lucia walks by, they instantly switch topics. The heroine smiles, realizing it's been ages since people stared at her like that. Suddenly, a little ways off, she spots Lion Ruvens, who's immediately swarmed by women. The moment he shows up, he tries to push through the crowd to get to Lucia, but his fangirls won't let him take a single step her way. Finally, Lion manages to break free and rushes after the heroine, calling for her to wait up. But when she actually looks at him, he suddenly gets all flustered, like he forgot why he ran over. Lion notices the book in Lucia's hands about proven parenting methods, and remembers she has a kid. Still, not getting any real conversation out of the White Mage commander, the heroine says goodbye and gets ready to leave. But he stops her again, about to say something about the book, then just cuts himself off mid-sentence. Blushing bright red, he tells her to come to him if she ever needs anything. After that, Lion calls for a carriage to take Lucia back home. On the way, she thinks to herself that the rumors about his perfect manners are definitely true. But then Lucia remembers his note, the one she took as some kind of hidden threat, and gets even more confused. The heroine studies the cover of the book she picked up from the library. For some reason, the boy's face on the cover looks oddly familiar to her. The carriage pulls up to a bridge, and underneath a pleasure boat is floating by. The laughing people in the boat left their carriages, parked on the bridge, and went down to the water, causing a traffic jam. The coachman asks the heroine to wait a bit. While he tries to sort things out, she decides to take the chance to stretch her legs and walk around the bridge. For a bit, she looks at the river, enjoying the gorgeous weather. Honestly, it's perfect for a boat ride. Suddenly, as she looks closer, she spots a guy having fun with a group of young aristocratic ladies. He notices her too, and surprised to see her here, happily greets Commander Lucia once he's back on land. He apologizes for blocking her way, and explains he was planning to enjoy a walk alone, but just happened to run into these young ladies. The crown prince of the empire, Aranis Real Daryan, has always been popular. Lucia greets the young son of the empire with respect, then immediately asks to excuse herself. But Aaron stops her to hand over a gift, in honor of her becoming a swordmaster, and offers her a rattle, still smiling. The prince asks if Lucia's child isn't a bit too old for toys like this. Lucia feels like Aaron is mocking her, but she keeps her cool and smiles back. The prince says he didn't know the commander of the Dark Knights had a child. Lucia doesn't answer, just turns away and heads for her carriage. But Aaron stops her, saying he has something important to tell her. Suddenly, he admits he's been watching Lucia for quite a while. Without turning around, she tries to figure out what exactly the prince means by that. The girls behind her start whispering, but she ignores them. It's only when Aaron asks if the child's father is still unknown that Lucia finally turns around. The heroine first met the crown prince when she was 16, after she was assigned as his escort. She treated Aaron just like everyone else, but for some reason he took a liking to her. The prince looks at Lucia's face, still just as indifferent as it was 5 years ago, and his heart still skips a beat. The heroine glances at His Highness's companions, but she can't even be mad at them. They're way too young still. Lucia can't just let things slide, so she confidently heads over to the group. As she gets closer to the terrified ladies, she smirks and tells the prince she won't say who the baby's father is. Hard to pick just one when she spent her nights with so many back then. The young noblewoman turned bright red, totally shocked by her shameless words. Her answer stuns not just the girls, but the prince too. He pauses, a wicked grin flickering across his face. But suddenly, blood spurts from His Highness's nose and splatters onto Lucia. The servants rush to the prince, but he pushes them away and grabs for a handkerchief. Aaron steps up to Lucia and asks if he can wipe her collar as an apology. Then he leans in and whispers, asking if she remembers what's closest to her training grounds, because right there is none other than the crown prince's palace. Aaron wasn't lying when he said he watched Lucia. It's become part of his daily routine. But it seems her child wasn't just born unusually small. After all, the prince never once saw her with a baby bump, and there's no way he could have missed a pregnancy. In all those 5 years stepping away from Lucia, Aaron promises this will be their little secret. He offers her his hand and says he just wants to get closer to her. That's all. Lucia looks at the prince's hand and says, she gets his point loud and clear. Lucia's boldness amazes Aaron all over again, and a thin trickle of blood starts running from his nose, heading back to the training field that's become her home. Lucia thinks over the prince's words. The heroine doesn't get why he suddenly wants to get close. She's barely said 2 words to him her whole life. In her previous life he died young, just 3 years after taking the throne, didn't even make it to 40, but now he claims he's been watching Lucia every day, and doubts her kid even exists. Either way he'll keep her secret, at least until he wants something. And right now she's got no choice but to trust him. When Lucia walks in she sees something weird. Vernon's crawling around on all 4s, and there's a red-haired girl riding on his back. The heroine asks the knight, who's barely managing to play horse, who this kid is. The girl looks up at her with big, green eyes and fires the same question right back. Who's Lucia? But instead of an answer, she gets whacked on the head with a ladle. Jillian rushes in from the kitchen, yelling at Yvonne for daring to talk to the commander like that. Embarrassed, the girl explains it's her niece. Her sister just asked her to watch the kid for a bit. The heroine scans the room trying to spot Nia. Even though Yvonne says she's not here, Lucia still manages to find the little one. She's sitting under the table, shaking for some reason, figuring the kids are playing hide and seek. The heroine quietly sneaks up behind her, but since Nia is playing with her friend, Lucia pretends not to notice and says she's heading upstairs. As soon as she hears that, the girl crawls out from under the table. She runs to Lucia begging her not to leave, and right after Yvonne dashes over, shouting that she's found Nia with her hands on her hips. Like always, the girl asks her aunt who that pretty but scary lady is, the one who looks totally crazy. Lucia smiles and introduces herself as Nia's mom. Yvonne doesn't buy it. She thinks moms are supposed to be big and chubby, and Jillian scolds her again. The little girl promises she'll stay quiet from now on, and Lucia is honestly impressed by her aunt's parenting skills. Smiling, Yvonne politely introduces herself to our heroine. Then she runs over to Nia and asks if she loves her mom. When the little one says she likes Lucia, Yvonne is surprised she calls her by name. When she asks why Nia doesn't just call her mom, the girl's eyes fill with tears. She apologizes and says she's really sorry. Still, Lucia can feel everyone's eyes on her. They all want to hear Yvonne's question answered too. The heroine knew this day would come sooner or later, but she has no idea how to explain it. Nia steps in to help, saying she just can't, and puts her tiny hand on her chest to show it hurts there. The girl spent almost her whole life in an orphanage, and the kids there learned that if you like something, someone will take it away. Well, that goes for everything she likes. She's scared to admit it, whether it's toys, pillows, or even toothbrushes. The heroine realizes Nia has gotten used to hiding anything she cares about. This little one never learned how to share her happiness. Even a word like mom is something she keeps to herself. Tough Yvonne suspects Lucia must be awful, and probably hit Nia when she called her mom. But the girl jumps in to defend our heroine, shielding her and insisting that's not what happened at all. Jillian grabs Yvonne by the collar, and explains that Nia loves her mom so much. Just saying the word makes her chest ache. Those words shock Lucia, because she can't understand why this little girl loves her so much. The knights set up a tea party for the girls, on a picnic blanket in the dorm courtyard, by the training field. Yvonne teaches the girl how to properly hold a teacup. Sprawled out on the blanket, the girl is amazed by this beautiful place. Her mom never bought her toys like the ones Nia has. After thinking it over, she asks if she can bring Caesar along next time. Nia says she'll have to ask for permission first, but Yvonne says she'll handle it herself. Right away, she turns to Lucia and asks if she can bring Caesar with her. The heroine gives the girl a wave of approval, and Yvonne is amazed at how kind this tough-as-nails woman can be. She quickly picks out a spot that's going to be their new secret base from now on. It's a little playhouse that Lion sent to Nia, along with all the other gifts. Suddenly, remembering what Heath told her about what it means to be normal, Nia thinks she wants to be like her new friend. But then she remembers the kids at the orphanage, who refused to be friends and just bossed her around. Her eyes fill with tears again, and she decides to do whatever Yvonne says so she'll never have to go back to the orphanage. Suddenly, the girl tells Nia they've got a problem. She's out of pocket money. Her mom taught her never to take anything for free, not even from her very first friend. The fact that Yvonne calls her a friend really lifts Nia's spirits. The girl tells her she's only ever been friends with boys before, but honestly they're not much help. Yvonne really wants to thank her new friend for being so welcoming, and then she gets a great idea. She promises to help Nia call Lucia mom, and then they'll be even. The girl once tried to do it herself, but it just didn't work out. Yvonne pauses for a second, thinking about how to teach Nia to say mom. She suggests they try breaking it down into syllables first. In a shaky voice, Nia manages to squeeze out the first syllable. She can't get any further and bursts into tears again, but Yvonne doesn't give up and keeps making her repeat after her. Meanwhile, the knights are sitting under the trees at the table, enjoying the coffee and desserts Jillian made. Lucia watches the girls chatting in the meadow, smiling to herself. She can feel that little general energy coming off Yvonne, and wonders if Jillian was the same way as a kid. Lucia's also noticed that Heath's been extra quiet lately. She thinks it might have something to do with him using magic. While she was gone not long ago, when she checked the dorm, Lucia found traces of teleportation magic, and it was clearly Heath's doing. She doesn't know exactly what happened, but it bothers her that the guy keeps shooting her these sideways glances. So Lucia turns to Heath and tells him to eat up. After all, you need something sweet after using magic. Heath tenses up, thinking the commander figured out he tried to send Nia to the temple, but looking at her calm face, Heath can't figure out why she isn't mad at him, especially since he's been jealous of Nia, getting all of Lucia's attention. Avoiding her gaze, he asks what she'd do if he just disappeared. Not really getting where he's going with this, Lucia asks where he wants to go, and says he can take a break if he needs one, but Heath, looking down, explains he meant disappearing for good. Lucia just smiles and reminds him she already told him she plans to use him for the rest of his life. Back on the battlefield, Heath had asked Lucia if she saved him just to use him, and she answered smiling, just like now, that if she could, she'd do it her whole life, especially since the Night Order is about to be formed. Heath asked if she'd stay by his side, even if he couldn't use magic anymore. Reaching out her hand, Lucia said that in that case, she'd just have him help with the cleaning. The commander's always been like that. Even when she saw Heath's magic getting out of control, she pretended not to notice. In the end, they just asked him to make a few artifacts that barely needed any magic at all. The only person who never expected anything from him was Lucia. So now Heath is apologizing to her. She smiles as she looks at her charge. Jillian runs up to them again, wanting to know if they've tried the desserts from her family's bakery. She says they're even planning to supply those pastries to the local kindergarten. She's annoyed that our heroine doesn't show any reaction at all, and blames the commander for being heartless. Jillian points out that Lucia should really think about the new kindergarten admissions this year. Competition's fierce because of all the new noble families. And even though Yvonne already passed her interview, our heroine doesn't get why she can't just hire a nanny for Nia. Noble kids get their education before debuting at the Eldarian Imperial Academy. Sure, kids with nannies and tutors don't need the academy, but it was set up after the empire was founded, to help the old and new nobility get along. Lucia wasn't planning to send Nia there, but after Jillian's pressure, she's starting to doubt herself. Suddenly the heroine's thoughts are interrupted by a group of girls, running up to her with her hands on her hips. Yvonne nudges Nia to do what she was planning. Working up her courage, the little girl steps closer to Lucia, looks her in the eye and whispers "Mom" in her ear. As soon as she says it, her face turns bright red from embarrassment and she runs off. Yvonne chases after her, pats her on the head and praises her for doing such a great job. Meanwhile, Lucia is frozen in shock. Nia just called her mom. She decided to raise this special, God-chosen girl like any ordinary child, so she wouldn't have the same lonely childhood Lucia did. In the Grand Hall of the Imperial Palace, a meeting is underway. Count Render insists they can't ignore Lucia's situation. If the child is 5, then by the timing of her pregnancy, she must have neglected her official duties. Everyone else is upset too, demanding the Dark Knight's commander stop getting special treatment, and that the same rules apply to everyone. The Emperor's surprised that everyone keeps acting like those other lazy officials are in the same boat as Lucia. He reminds them just how much this girl, who's a master swordsman by the way, does for the Empire. What really bugs the Emperor is why he keeps seeing the same boring faces at these meetings. And when His Majesty hears that the new nobles need extra training, because they don't know the political scene, he jumps out of his chair furious. The Emperor yells that it's been 5 years already, and if they still don't get what's going on, the least they can do is show up to these meetings, demanding that the nobles keep their power struggles under control. His Majesty storms out of the room. Count Render brings up Commander Lucia again, upset that the Emperor isn't doing anything about her. That's when Marquis Fedoran Levins, the Imperial Chancellor, speaks up. He asks the Count what exactly he's suggesting. Then everyone starts shouting that Lucia should be punished and stripped of her title, and the Marquis just listens in silence for a while. The Marquis agrees to the Count's idea, but warns that if they go through with it, Lucia might just leave the Empire, and then Render will have to take responsibility for picking a new master swordsman. But the Count insists Lucia is just a woman, showing off her one skill and looking down on everyone else. Marquis Levon immediately shoots back. That's a big mistake, and tells him to think carefully before making a move, because he's sure Lucia only acts that way because she can. When the meeting ends and everyone heads out, Duke Anton Radium Kilgus stops the Count. He wants to know if Render's son really does dream of becoming commander. The Count gets what the Duke's hinting at, but can't find the words to answer. So Kilgus tells him not to dwell on the past, and reminds him that Lucia is just a knight. Sharp and dangerous, sure, but in the end still just a weapon for someone to wield. Over at the Eldarian Academy's kindergarten, a new workday begins. The new teacher, Emily Tanks walks down the long hallway and runs into her colleagues. The girl overhears people behind her gossiping that, as the Count's daughter, she lost everything and got kicked out of her family estate. Without letting it show, Emily greets the women with a smile and keeps walking. The ladies start talking again, this time about how Emily used to be so popular at the academy, even leading her own group of followers. Flashing her green eyes, Emily thinks about teaching these worthless people a lesson, if she ever runs into them outside the academy walls. Even though her family fell apart and she's just a commoner now, today's her first day working as a preschool teacher. Emily's goal is pretty simple. She wants to secure a good marriage. Since aristocrats often look for wives among the teachers, she plans to show them she's smart, kind, great with kids, and wise enough to support her future husband. Determined to succeed and get revenge on everyone who mocked her, Emily puts on a dazzling smile and walks into the principal's office. Marchioness Norcha Font Rubens greets the new teacher with a warm smile. Emily wants to make her son fall for her, the most eligible bachelor in the empire, Lion Rubens, who never even went to the academy, and hasn't shown up in high society since coming of age. But there's a bigger problem. His heart already belongs to someone else, the dark monster Lucia. When that rumor spread among the nobles, Emily realized something important. Back at the academy she used to bully Lucia all the time, and Lion can never find out about that. So Emily came up with a plan, and step one is getting close to his mother. Norcha smiles at Emily and congratulates her on her new position. Emily is thrilled to hear that. The principal has been watching her closely during all those interviews. Over the years she worked so hard to get into this preschool. It even took her 5 years just to prepare for the entrance exam. In her mind, Emily already sees herself impressing Lion's mother, and then marrying him, but all those dreams come crashing down. The moment the first family shows up for their interview, Emily tries to figure out why the dark monster is here, with a child who looks exactly like her. That morning Lucia decided to try and get Nia into the preschool. Jillian said was nearly impossible to get into. As soon as they walked in, they saw a long line already forming for the interviews. Lucia felt totally out of place. She had to wear a dress and heels, and she was so not used to that. If her loyal knights hadn't protested, she would have happily shown up at the academy in her uniform. But Lucia wasn't the only one uncomfortable. Little Nia looked absolutely terrified. Lucia figured it was probably because the girl didn't know anyone or anything about this place. The director's secretary called in family number 128 for their interview. Lucia and Nia still had 5 families ahead of them, which meant about another hour of waiting. Lucia felt relieved they were calling people by number. Her name might have caused chaos in a crowd like this. She glanced at Nia, who was shaking with fear, thinking it was because this was her first time in such a crowded place. After all, the kid had spent her whole childhood in an orphanage, then in a dusty warehouse with birds. But Lucia really wanted to give her a life where she could fit in with other people. No problem, even if Nia's holy powers awakened. Lucia just wanted her to have a normal life. And for that to happen, the girl needed to start getting used to being around others now. But then Lucia wondered if maybe all this was just her own selfish way of making up for past regrets. Right as she thought that maybe Nia didn't even want this kind of life, their number was called. Lucia stood up and told Nia she didn't have to go to preschool if it was too much for her. So Lucia asked Nia to wait while she went to cancel the interview. The little girl didn't understand why. Lucia suddenly wanted to cancel everything and started blaming herself for messing up again. But after looking around, she decided it was okay. There were just so many people, and that really scared her. Suddenly Nia overheard 2 moms talking. One lady was telling the other how she couldn't wait for her daughter to finally start preschool, because handling kids at home was just too much. The girl was shocked by what she heard, and started wondering if Lucia could handle her if she didn't go to preschool. The main character went back to the waiting room to tell Nia that canceling the interview would be tough. But then, to her surprise, the little girl jumped forward and shouted that she wanted to go to preschool, even though the other women were charmed by a kid who actually wanted to learn, unlike their own. Lucia was trying to figure out what made her decide that. And just like that, the brand new mom and her adorable daughter ended up at the interview. The director admired their matching outfits and admitted she was a little jealous, since she only had sons herself. Lucia eyed the strange woman who greeted them at the door. She'd heard this girl was her age and taught at the academy, but couldn't figure out why she was shaking so much. Marchioness Norcha told Emily she could leave if she had urgent business, and Emily happily excused herself. Lucia watched her go but just couldn't remember the girl. She barely recalled anything from her academy days, which she'd only attended because her family insisted. The main character decided to take a closer look at this place, where the staff acted so oddly. The director gently asked Nia why she wanted to join their preschool. The girl stayed silent, clutching her dress in nervous hands, trembling with fear. Lucia still wasn't totally sure about how things worked here, but the director didn't seem all that different from the books she'd written. While books about kids and parenting only show the grace of a swan gliding on water, she focused on real, practical ways to raise children. Miss Norcha realized Nia didn't actually want to go to preschool, so she asked the girl directly, The little one stared at the director in surprise but didn't answer. So the director asked if she had any friends. With her head down, the girl says she has a friend named Yvonne. The marquise notes, "That's wonderful because even if Nia doesn't go to preschool, she can still give her mom gifts every single day. After all, there's someone in this world who treasures her stories, like precious gems, and that person is her mom, who'll happily listen to every tale about Mia's time with Avon." Lucia smiles as she watches the girl soak up every word. The marquise says, Mia asks excitedly if she really can tell her mom stories every day. The director confirms it, adding that now, the girl can finally let out everything she's been holding inside. This whole conversation reminds Lucia of a line from Madame Norcha's book. Shy kids aren't quiet because they have nothing to say. Their hearts are full of stories. They just need a little more courage to speak up. The interview ends and Lucia and Nia say goodbye to the director. Madame Norcha calls after them, announcing that Nia's been accepted into the preschool, totally shocking our heroine, who thought results wouldn't be out for a month. The woman pats the little girl's head and smiling asks, who else could possibly belong here if not this kid? Then glancing at Lucia, she adds that she was just joking, and actually she has her own reasons for accepting Nia. Apparently she thinks her foolish son is causing Lucia trouble, while the marquise is thinking she fully supports her son's choice. Lucia is left trying to figure out what's going on. Lucia gets even more confused when Norcha says, they might as well treat each other like family, since they'll be seeing each other every day anyway. A month goes by, and it's time to get ready for the preschool entrance ceremony. Lucia takes Nia to a tailor shop to order her uniform. Following Lucia with hesitant steps, the girl gazes in awe at all the dress samples on display. A consultant hurries over to ask if they're here to order a uniform for the little princess. The garden's opening ceremony usually happens at the end of summer, probably because that's when the empire was founded. While checking out the girl, the consultant showers her with compliments and asks, who did her gorgeous hair? Nia relaxes a bit and excitedly says that Vernon braided her hair. The heroine notices that after talking with the sharp-eyed Norcha, the little girl has really changed. She talks and smiles a lot more now. The consultant asks Lucia and her daughter to wait a moment, while she finishes with the previous customer. They sit down on the couch, and to make the wait nicer, someone brings them a plate of animal-shaped cookies. The heroine looks at Nia, and thinks about how the girl's picked up 2 bad habits lately. First she keeps helping around the house, and now she scrubs the floor so hard the wood's starting to peel, but Lucia's too nervous to say anything. The second bad habit is that Nia hides the things she actually likes. That scares the heroine even more than her cleaning obsession, because if this keeps up, the other kids at daycare will just snatch everything out of her hands. Lucia worries that loss and sacrifice are just part of being a saint. Still, the heroine wants to help the girl break this habit, so she asks if those cookies really do look super tasty. She says that when she was little, she barely ever saw cookies like that and never even got to try them, not even now as an adult. Lucia smiles and asks if that's why Nia's mouth is watering. She really hopes the girl will admit she wants to try the cookies. But just as Nia starts to say something, Marion bursts into the shop with a cheerful greeting, and interrupts her. Lucia instantly recognizes Burrell's sister, and stands up from the couch to say hello. She reminds her son to introduce himself to the lady, and Caesar, who's got perfect manners, politely says his name Marie, and points out that it was thanks to Lady Lucia that she got to stay with her son after he was born. Caesar thanks the commander too, and she's clearly impressed by how well this little gentleman speaks. Suddenly the boy notices someone hiding behind Lucia's skirt. Nia peeks out shyly and tells the new people her name. The main character feels a bit sad that the little girl still hasn't learned to greet people politely, and just introduces herself instead. But Marine clearly isn't bothered at all. She instantly starts gushing over Nia the moment she sees her. According to the woman, Caesar is a really calm kid, and among his friends there's only one super energetic girl, who always manages to break something whenever she visits. When Lucia smiles, pretty sure they're talking about Yvonne. After wrapping up the fitting, the shop worker decides to thank Nia for being so patient. She hands the girl a basket of candy and tells her to take a few. Nia stares at the basket in silence for a bit, then shakes her head to say no. Lucia watches amazed that the little one is turning down sweets, even though she loves them. But suddenly, Nia grabs the old lady's skirt and asks her for a cookie instead. She explains she wants to give it to Lucia, who's never even tried one. Not even as a kid, the woman looks at Nia in surprise. She's only asking for a single cookie. When the other customers hear the little girl ask for a treat, they start whispering to each other, but the main character ignores it, realizing this is what happens when you don't explain things to kids the right way. Grabbing the plate of cookies, Nia runs over to Lucia and hands her a treat with a big, happy smile. Lucia smiles back warmly, her heart filling with joy at how happy the little girl is. Once the fitting's done, Lucia and Nia leave the shop holding hands. As they walk down the busy streets, Lucia mentally goes over her back-to-school shopping list to make sure she hasn't forgotten anything, but then all of a sudden she feels someone's eyes locked right on her. She glances around to make sure that pickpocket gang isn't watching them. The girl realizes it'll be tough to fight back on this crowded, cramped street, so gripping Nia's hand tighter, Lucia turns off toward a quieter area. After heading a bit deeper into the alley, our heroine stops without looking back. She orders their pursuer to show themselves, her voice firm behind the girl. People in cloaks appear, their faces hidden under hoods. Lucia studies them closely and notices they're not adults. She figures it's a gang of street kids. The gang leader tells her to empty her pockets and leave her shoes too. Lucia calmly says she'll give them 5 gold coins. Enough food for a month. The young criminals huddle up and start begging their boss to just take the money. But the leader, definitely a girl, says that's not enough. She orders the others to search them right now. Lucia, surprised by how fearless these kids are, shields Nia with her body. The girl decides to scare the criminals a little. A bright red orb of power flares up in her hands, sending magical shadows toward the gang. Terrified, the young thieves scatter in all directions. The heroine feels sorry for these kids, forced to steal just to survive since honest work barely feeds them. The whole thing leaves a pretty bitter taste in her mouth. After scaring off the attackers, Lucia turns to Nia only to find the girls gone. The little one is sprinting after the thieves, yelling at them to stop. Even with her hood up, she instantly recognized the gang leader as Mia. The other guys can't figure out why that girl from the alley, the one with the mage lady, is chasing after them. They notice the kids wearing a fancy dress, but Mia tells them to back off since she knows her. Even though the thieves are scared to go back empty-handed, because of the boss, the girl orders them to scram and leave them alone. Mia pulls down her hood and walks up to the kid, barely believing her eyes. Mia bursts into tears, remembering how she promised she'd come back for her. Mia can't believe how naive Annie turned out to be, and asks who she was with in that alley. When she hears the girl call her mom, Mia is even more shocked but then grabs her by the shoulders. Mia says that sooner or later, that woman's gonna make her life a living hell. She was adopted too, but ended up on the streets anyway. Looking Annie over, Mia notices the girl's not dressed all that fancy. For a major's daughter, still crying. The kid says she doesn't know anything and tries to defend Lucia, and right then she finally realizes she ran away and got lost. Mia tries to calm her down and promises to take her back, but suddenly notices something. She hides the kid around the corner and tells her not to move, no matter what, if she wants to stay alive. Mia listens to her older friend and hides behind the wall, scared. Heavy footsteps get closer, and a man's voice demands to see what the gang managed to steal today. A disgusting man dumps out a nearly empty sack of loot, and starts yelling at the thieves in rage. Grabbing one of them, the jerk reminds them he's the one who feeds and shelters them. The man asks where Mia is, and the girl steps out from behind the corner. He orders her to take control of the others, threatening to sell her if they don't find anything useful by evening. The man's about to leave, but then he suddenly spots the edge of Mia's dress, sticking out from around the corner. Mia watches in horror as he heads for the girl, and yells at him to stop. She begs the man to let her go, insisting the little one has parents, but the others grab her arms. The man looks Nia over with a smug grin, thinking he can demand a ransom for her. But his joy doesn't last, because a bright razor-sharp flash suddenly slices down his back, leaving a deep wound. The creep's arms go limp and he drops Nia to the ground. He stares in terror at the 3 strangers who just appeared, trying to figure out who they are. Vernon says he's the kid's uncle. Jillian claims she's her aunt, and Heath totally blanks on what he was about to say. But the thieves watch in shock, as the 2 knights scolded the third for ruining the moment, and forgetting to say he's her brother. Jillian demands that Heath finally admit his place in their family, but he can't take the pressure and yells that he refuses. Just then a worried Lucia runs up asking where the child is. Beryl says Nia's safe, but they've got a new problem. Jillian points to a girl who's clinging to the little one and won't let go. Mia, eyes flashing with anger, holds the unconscious Mia tight, not letting anyone near her. She reminds Lucia of a mama cat protecting her kitten. Locking eyes with the girl, the heroine reaches out, grabs her by the neck, and the girl drops unconscious. The knights try to figure out what they just witnessed. Lucia explains she just knocked the little thief out for a bit. After checking on Nia, she sees the girl's breathing is normal. No fever, just a small scrape on her knee. Clearly the kid just fainted from fear. And Lucia breathes a sigh of relief, grateful for the tracking spell. Thanks to that spell, the team gets an alert if the commander's in danger or hurt. So when Lucia lost Nia, she cut herself to trigger it, and quickly gathered everyone to start searching. Ignoring Beryl's comment that she needs medical attention, Lucia demands a status report. According to her deputy, the man was the gang leader, but since he's dead, they'll have to wait for security to clear things up. Lucia praises her team for a job well done, and promises a reward once they're reinstated. Looking at the dead pickpocket boss, she realizes she'll have to write a report for the first time in ages. Honestly, Lucia feels relieved she wasn't the first to arrive. If she had been, that scumbag would have died so horribly. No report could have saved her. Back home, the heroine lays both girls down on the couch. Nia wakes up first, rubs her eyes, and immediately calls for her mom. When she sees Lucia, she runs into her arms, sobbing and blaming herself for what happened. The heroine tries to calm the little one since she's so scared, and Nia explains she saw her sister and ran after her. Lucia hugs the girl tight, thankful everything turned out okay and she's safe now. She wipes Nia's tears and asks her to tell her next time if she wants to go somewhere, so they can do it together. Lowering her eyes, the little one suddenly notices blood on Lucia's hand, and cries out in fear. The heroine assures her it's not her fault. She cut herself on purpose. Not understanding, Nia begs her not to do that again since the wound looks really painful. Lucia explains it's fine, she did it to protect her. The little one desperately wants to help. Her mom reaches out to the wound, and a divine power shines through her, helping it heal, feeling an incredible warmth. And the heroine tries to figure out how Nia's able to heal her, since using divine power to help others depends on your training level. After fully healing Lucia's wound, the little girl collapses on her shoulder, totally spent right then. Mia comes to and walks over, saying she knew this would happen. Ignoring the question about who she even is, the girl lashes out at Lucia, accusing her of wanting to use Annie for her power. She tries to snatch the kid from Lucia's arms, all while throwing more accusations at her. Lucia keeps her cool and just gives the stranger a cold stare. Frozen for a second under that intense gaze, Mia suddenly drops to her knees, and begs Lucia to send Annie to the temple. She insists the little girl is a poor child, who's already been through so much. Lucia demands she listen carefully, then says the Annie she's talking about is now Nia, a saint who'll only find death if she goes to the temple. Mia refuses to believe it, but Lucia proves her point by saying she's never told anyone this before. She's sharing something so important, because Mia ran after her without thinking of the danger, and Mia herself got down on her knees for her sake. That's why Lucia decided she could trust this girl. Hearing Lucia talk about trust, Mia feels something she's never felt before. The heart she thought was dead suddenly starts beating again. Meanwhile, Marianne is at work in the White Mage's office, chatting with her coworker about the latest news. She mentions how she ran into Commander Lucia yesterday, at the tailor's shop where they make kids' clothes. According to Marianne, it's obvious Lucia's getting her little one ready for kindergarten. She's shocked that nobody cares about the child herself. Everyone just wants to know who the father is, since there are rumors Luce has been with a lot of men. Both women admire the commander, who lives a life they can only dream of. Suddenly Marianne remembers that the little girl's eyes were golden. It hits her that the father might be Lion Reuven's, which could explain his sudden obsession with Lucia, but the woman doesn't want to jump to conclusions. She knows someone else with golden eyes, and that someone is none other than Crown Prince Aaron, with his angelic looks and bad boy charm. Lost in these thoughts, the woman don't notice Commander Lion walking into the office. Seeing the startled faces of his subordinates, he tries to find out what's wrong, but they just tell him not to worry about it. Lion tosses some documents onto the table and takes his seat. When he hears that Lucia got hurt, he regrets not swiping a couple of magic trackers then. He could have rushed to help her in time. Realizing this is a classic case of love fever, the ladies decide to give Lion some advice. They tell him not to shower the girl with gifts again. What she really needs now is someone she can count on. Lion remembers that Nia's father ran off, and Lucia, true to form, is keeping that jerk's name a secret. He wonders if a loyal woman like her would ever give another guy a chance. Marian talks about meeting Lucia yesterday, and how she's planning to send her little one to kindergarten. She says all the other families will show up as couples, and it's a shame the commander will be there alone. Suddenly Marian realizes she can actually plan something. She tells Lion she's got a brilliant idea. The day of the entrance ceremony arrives, and Lucia heads to the academy with Nia. Our heroine looks out the window, thinking about how fast time has flown by. The girl's ears are still ringing from this morning's whining, and when she grabs her head, Nia worriedly asks if it hurts. Not long ago a nasty article came out about the Dark Knights, so for Lucia's little one, she has to keep her identity a secret. But keeping a secret like that isn't easy, especially for someone like her. Nia keeps pestering Lucia, asking if her head still hurts. The heroine smiles and reassures the girl that she's totally fine, but just in case she reminds Nia again not to use the cotton candy. That's their code word for divine power. Lucia decided not to teach her the real name yet. Just to be safe, the heroine wonders how that girl, Mia's doing. Mia seemed like someone who hates owing people, so instead of asking her to stay, Lucia helped her get a spot at the palace. The heroine remembers how Mia's eyes lit up at the imperial palace, so she figures Mia's probably doing all right. Finally the carriage pulls up to the academy, where colorful balloons are floating all around. Lucia and Mia, dressed in matching dresses, step out of the carriage and head toward the kindergarten. The heroine feels like an overfed bird in this lace-covered dress. In the banquet hall, families are already gathered, chatting and sipping champagne. Lucia's used to getting special attention wherever she and Nia go, and today is no different. The little one is thrilled, checking out the goodies in her gift box from the ceremony. Lucia reminds the girl that all of it belongs to her, then asks what she's going to do with it. Nia says that since it's hers, she'll take good care of it, and that answer is good enough for the heroine. Two women come over and sit down at their table. Baronesses Mara Rethiran and Sardian Poffin introduce themselves to the girl. The heroine thinks it's odd. They're introducing themselves without knowing who she is, just in case she decides to give her first name, but skips the last name. But since Lucia didn't mention her family name, the girls might think she's just a commoner. Suddenly Certain laughs and says they're in the same boat. After all, they only got their own family names recently too. The girls say they're from the north, and when they ask where Lucia's from, she's scrambling to figure out what's going on. Finally our heroine remembers that newly made nobles had to apply for a family name. That's how Lucia manages to dodge an awkward moment. But suddenly Mara points out she doesn't see the girl's husband anywhere, and guesses he must be super busy. Lucia just says she doesn't have a husband, and the whole table goes silent. She's sure this will work since in noble circles, a widow without a husband is a dead-end connection. She waits for the ladies to come up with an excuse to leave her company. Still Lucia can't help worrying about how this will affect Nia. The little one looks up at her mom with those big, golden eyes full of questions. And right then, our heroine senses both baronesses standing behind her chair. Certain says she had a feeling about this from the moment she walked in. The girls start crying thinking Lucia's husband went off to war, and want to comfort her out of gratitude. Technically if you skip the husband part, there really was a war, and the immigrant nobles are alive because of it. Lucia barely gets a word in, before she's suddenly the center of attention, with everyone gushing over her and her hero husband. Without even trying she's somehow become the perfect noble wife. Shocked by all the crying ladies, Nia nervously asks her mom if everything's okay. Right then everyone's attention shifts to a new guest at the ceremony. Lucia turns to see who just made the whole room stir. When the crowd parts a bit, she finally gets a look at the newcomers. Lion Ruvens walks in flashing a dazzling smile. He was holding a kid by the hand, and Lucia recognized him right away. It was none other than Caesar. Right then Yvonne, always ready for action, runs up to find out who this big brother is that brought her friend. The boy explains that this is Lion Ruvens, who came today instead of his parents. When Yvonne realizes he's the same white mage Caesar always pretends to be, when they play she gives him a deep curtsy. Lion introduces himself to the young lady, and asks her to look after his companion. The whole scene cracks Lucia up, since Yvonne is totally in her element again. The teacher asks everyone who's joining Sparrow class to take their seats. Yvonne, Caesar and Nia sit in the front row, listening closely. When the teacher asks who wants to introduce themselves first, Yvonne shoots her hand up. Right away the girl walks up to the board, puts her hands on her hips like always, and says she's from a baron's family. Her family makes desserts, and someday Yvonne wants to win a pastry contest. The kids all know their bakery, and the teacher notes that Yvonne's just bursting with energy. Next up is Caesar Chaplin, whose dad's a professor at the academy, but Caesar himself wants to defend the empire. Just like Commander Lion, then Gedron, the son of the Merchants Guild leader, steps up to the board when the boy talks about buying a title. All the kids start waving their hands, wanting to get one too. Nia sits on her little chair, nervously fidgeting with her fingers, knowing her turn is coming soon. When the little girl walks up to the board, she freezes, not sure what to say. The teacher suggests she talk about her dream, just like Caesar did, gathering her courage. Nia smiles and says her mom is really beautiful and an awesome knight. Gudrun starts teasing her, saying his dad thinks knights are below barons, and she doesn't even have the right to dream about that. The teacher grabs her head, trying to explain that his behavior is totally out of line, and the boy needs to apologize. But since Gedron thinks his money means he never has to say sorry, Yvonne jumps up and starts throwing insults at him. Even though the teacher tells her to stop, the girl keeps hurling insults and shakes him by the shoulders. Yvonne looms over Gedron like a storm cloud, and orders him to apologize to Nia. Right now the teacher tries to keep her cool, but deep down she's already dreaming of quitting this job. Meanwhile in the next room, the parents are jotting down the schedule and emergency meds info. Lucia stands a little off to the side under a tree, listening to the advice but not writing anything down. She's decided to leave all that for Vernon later. Just then Lion walks up and asks her how she's feeling. She looks tiredly at the guy who showed up, the second she finally got away from everyone's attention. When she asks what he's doing here, Lion, just like Marion taught him, says there's trouble in their order, and he's here to fill in for someone. Lying has never been easy for him, especially when it's to the woman he's been in love with for 7 years. When Lucia hears Lion is covering for a busy night, she can't believe he still lives so carefree. Even in her past life this guy was a real pain, always sending mages to her training grounds, and when she moved to the mountains, he'd always find a reason to show up. Lucia just doesn't get why he always goes so far, trying to take care of everyone. Finally working up the nerve, Lion asks if she'd mind hanging out with him after the ceremony. Not wanting any more attention, Lucia says she's done riding in the captain's carriage, and since she needs to finish listening to the lecture, she asks him to leave. Her blunt answer stings Lion's heart, and he wonders if he rushed things. The ceremony ends and the parents meet up with their kids. After the intro class, Lucia calls Nia over and is surprised to see how down she looks. When the girl left with Yvonne, she was all smiles, so Lucia figures the two friends must have had a fight. Nia doesn't want to talk about what happened, so Lucia decides to ask her again once they're in the carriage. But before they even reach the carriage, Lucia hears surprised whispers ripple through the crowd. People are rushing home, because the Black Knights just showed up out of nowhere. Those guys who've been hanging around the slums, and apparently someone died. The gold cords on their black uniforms shine in the sun. As the knights line up in formation, Lucia tries to see what's going on, but the crowd's packed too tight. She freezes in shock when she hears Jillian and Vernon yelling that Beryl's lost it and the commander's going to kill him. With a nasty grin, the deputy asks how Jillian found this place, and suggests there's a traitor among them. He announces this is the first initiation ceremony, and they should celebrate it in style. Heath just silently watches everything unfold. Munching on a cookie, Jillian demands they break up the knights before Lucia finds out, but Beryl insists this is his achievement, and he'll get the commander's praise. Lucia watches for a while, as these idiots make a scene and draw everyone's attention. Not wanting any rumors about who she really is, Lucia decides to get out of there as fast as possible. She grabs Nia's hand and hurries to the carriage, her subordinates arguing loudly behind her. But then something else catches Lucia's eye. A weird scene unfolding nearby. Yvonne, red-faced with anger, is shouting at the top of her lungs that she's done apologizing. Her mom, clutching her head, begs her to calm down, but Yvonne just glares furiously at some red-haired boy. Gedren's mother says she'll let this incident slide, out of respect for the principal, but next time she won't stay quiet. Yvonne's mom, Julie, apologizes yet again to the boy, who just looks at her daughter with a smug grin. The second the adults look away, he sticks his tongue out at the girl. Seeing that, Yvonne's anger flares up all over again and she charges at Gedren. The boy's dad yells that no one will ever marry such an aggressive girl. Julie jumps in to defend her daughter, not getting why he's talking about marriage for such a little kid. She loses her cool and says that Brat totally deserved to get hit, then blames his parents for raising him wrong. The man turns to leave, throwing out that Yvonne's family will regret this, because they'll be demanding compensation. Gedren's dad calls his family to follow him and they walk off. Left alone, Yvonne's mom mutters through clenched teeth that they'll talk about this at home, right? Then the girl spots Nia and Lucia and points them out to her mom. Smiling, the heroine walks up to Yvonne's family and greets them. Julie, a bit embarrassed, apologizes for not making the best impression. She and her husband Dave introduce themselves to Lucia and thank her for looking after their daughter last time. The heroine apologizes, explaining she has urgent business, but promises to greet them properly next time their eyes meet. And Lucia can't ignore basic manners, but now she just wants to get out of here as fast as possible. But as soon as the girl turns to finally head for the carriage, Nia yanks her hand free and runs off. Out of nowhere, the little girl rushes over to Yvonne and hugs her tight. With tears in her eyes, Nia apologizes to her friend, but Yvonne hugs her back and says, "It's all that jerk's fault anyway." Hearing her daughter curse in front of others, Julie scolds her, but Yvonne says, "Everyone should know what a creep Gedren is. He said Nia's rank was too low to study here." Those words hit Lucia like lightning, and then, the girl goes on about how he bragged he had more money than anyone. Now the heroine finally gets why Nia was so down. She herself could brush off the teasing about her title, but knowing Nia went through that, too, makes her feel awful. Lucia suddenly wants to grab that little jerk and hang him upside down from the kindergarten roof. She clenches her fists in anger, but then hears a familiar voice behind her. Turning around, Lucia sees Beryl running up to her, all smiles, happy to finally find his commander. Vernon and Heath instantly swoop in from both sides and clamp their hands over the guy's mouth. Beryl tries to break free, wanting to congratulate his commander, while Jillian whispers for him to stop. Blowing Lucia's cover, everyone around is staring, mouths open, as the red-haired knight asks the deputy if he really doesn't remember what people call their commander. And suddenly Beryl breaks free from Vernon and Heath and shouts that, of course he remembers, she's the Black Monster. Silence falls and Lucia hears people whispering that the Black Monster's daughter will be going to this kindergarten. Nia looks around listening, as people hope she won't end up in the same class as their kids. It's like a dark cloud is hanging right over the heroine's head. In her past life she never cared what people said about her, but this time, her own child is getting all the stares and unwanted attention. Because of her, Lucia's never felt this bad before. She squeezes her eyes shut, feeling something churning inside her. When she opens them again, she suddenly spots Lion at the edge of the crowd holding Tasser's hand. Deciding this is her chance, she rushes over and grabs the guy by the hand. Lion has no idea what's going on, or why Lucia just grabbed him like that. Then smiling, she asks if his offer from earlier still stands.